namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter number 85, text 8 and 9. And 8 doesn't have a purport, and so we'll do both. And I'll say the first verse, tarpaṇaṁ, prāṇanam, apāṁ, deva tvaṁ tash tad-rasaḥ, ojaḥ saho balaṁ ceṣṭā, gatir vāyos taveśvara. And in case you're wondering about the meanings, word meanings, I'll say them too. Would you like to repeat? Okay, 3 people. Tarpaṇam, the capacity to generate satisfaction. Prāṇanam, the giving of life. Apāṁ, of water. Deva, O Lord. Tvam, you. Ta, water itself. Water itself. Cha, and. Tat, of it, water. Rasaḥ, the taste. Ojaḥ, bodily warmth and vitality due to strength of the vital air. Sahaḥ, mental strength. Balam, and physical strength. Ceṣṭā, endeavor. Gatiḥ, and movement. Vāyoḥ, of air. Tava, your. īśvara, O Supreme Controller. Translation. This is Vasudeva speaking to his son Krishna. My Lord, you are water, and also its taste and its capacities to quench thirst and sustain life. You exhibit your potencies through the manifestations of the air as bodily warmth, vitality, mental power, physical strength, endeavor, and movement. And here's text number 9. We'll do the word for word first. Disham, of the directions. Tvam, you. Of akāshaḥ, the power to accommodate. Asi, are. Disha, the directions. Come, the ether. Spotaha, elemental sound. Ashraya, having ether as its basis. Nadaha, sound in its form of unmanifest vibration. Varnaha, the primeval syllable. Tvam, you. Omkara, Om. Akritīnām, of particular forms. Pratakriti, the cause of differentiation, namely manifest language. And the translation is as follows. You are the directions and their accommodating capacity, the all-pervading ether, and the elemental sound residing within it. You are the primeval, unmanifested form of sound, the first syllable Om, and audible speech by which sound as words acquires particular references. And let's try chanting the Sanskrit verse. Disham tvam avakashosi disha kam spota ashrayaha nado varnas tvam omkara akritīnam pratakriti Isham tvam avakashosi. Dishakam spota ashrayaha. Nado varnas tvam omkara. Akritina. Vaishnavis. Ishantam kashosi. Dishakam spota ashrayaha. Varnistvam amkara. And the translation again, please repeat if you like. You are the directions and their accommodating capacity, the all-pervading ether, and the elemental sound residing within it. You are the primeval, unmanifested form of sound. The first syllable, Om, an audible speech by which sound, as words, acquires particular references. And here is the purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. In accordance with the general process of creation, speech always becomes audible in stages, which proceed from subtle inner impulse to outward expression. These stages are mentioned in the mantras of the Rig Veda 1.164.45. Chaturvadi vak paramita padani. Tani vidur brahmana ye manishaha. Guhayam trini nihitani ningayanti. Turiyam vacho manushya vadanti. Discriminating brahmanas know of 4 progressive stages of language. 3 of these remain hidden within the heart as imperceptible vibrations, while the 4th stage is what people ordinarily understand as speech. I first offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and to all the assembled devotees. Patitanam pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. This interaction between Krishna and his father Vasudeva is slightly awkward, as we'll find out a little later, and it came to my mind when I read this verse, as I had been reading in this section about a month and a half ago. And actually it was on a test I had to take. And there was a section that describes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's analysis, observation about this conversation between Vasudeva and Krishna. And he says, and you'll come to this part, sorry to spoiler alert for those who will be here. Krishna had tried to avoid his father's awareness of his godhood, because after all, he's his father. And during the time when Krishna was at Kurukshetra for the eclipse of the sun, sages came from far and near. And they glorified Krishna extensively at that place. During that time, Vasudeva and everybody else, as we know, came to Kurukshetra for that event, the eclipse of the sun, including the residents of Vrindavan. Krishna was aware of the fact that as the sages were glorifying him and his father Vasudeva was listening, he was being affected by his opulence. In other words, because of the words of the sages, Vasudeva started to see Krishna more as the Supreme Personality of Godhead than as his son. And of course, when Krishna first appeared in Mathura, there was a bit of awkwardness as well, because, at least for the reader, Krishna has appeared with 4 arms in Narayan form, with a helmet and jewels, and still they're addressing us as their little child. And they say, please take the form of a baby, because we don't want Kamsa to recognize that you've been born here. Which also seems slightly odd, because of course he's looking for a little baby is Kamsa. And if you saw the Narayan form of the Lord, well, we don't know what would have happened, but we do know that Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for the Lord to become a baby. And that brings forth the way in which Krishna, born in Mathura as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and as a little baby, and Vasudeva and Devaki's relationship with Krishna, having him as their son, but also being more aware of his opulences than Nanda and Yashoda. Krishna wanted to keep it that way. And he went to some lengths during the killing of Kamsa and during other pastimes to shield Vasudeva and Devaki from his godhood. So here, the dam has broken. The opulence of Krishna has shone forth to Vasudeva because of the words of the sages, and now he's glorifying Krishna unabashedly and mentioning how he's all-pervading, how all energies come from him. And we'll find in the same context that I'm speaking of, a little further along, that Krishna is humbled by this. He is the Supreme Personality of God, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in this context that he bows his head before Vasudeva and says, well, anyway, we're all great because we're part of the one. And of course, the commentators go out of their way to point out that he's not saying we're all one, but it's Krishna's humility that he tries to say, yeah, okay, I'm the Supreme Personality of God, but you're also part of the Supreme Personality of God because you're living entities, and the whole dynasty is practically glorified. So, it's okay. It reminds me also of during Balaram's pilgrimages, which he did as Balaram and also Nityananda. He neared Jagannath Puri, but he didn't go there because, as is mentioned by our exalted commentators, the acharyas, say he didn't want the embarrassment of going and seeing himself on the altar as Balaram. So I thought it was notable that the same mood is portrayed here, this balancing that Krishna does between his godhood and those around him. Sometimes his opulences shine forth, and Vasudeva tips towards the side of opulence. Of course, we find when Mother Yashoda is holding court for Krishna because there's been an accusation leveled. Does anybody remember what it was? That he ate dirt. Some boys came, and even Balaram backed it up and said, yeah, he did it. Krishna ate dirt. And Yashoda, like, get him in here. Krishna, don't eat dirt. I didn't eat dirt, they're lying. It's like, okay, let's do a forensic investigation. Open your mouth. And then she sees the opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But then she says, all right, as Prabhupada says in his lecture when he's talking about it, just close your mouth, that's okay. Just don't do it again. She, as is presented there, has more predominant sense of intimacy through which the opulence doesn't overflow, as it is here with Vasudeva. In this verse, we can look at the specifics of what Vasudeva is saying about Krishna and his all-pervasive energies. And he's mentioning the process of creation. And he's also mentioning the directions, which is an element of facility in the material world, because if we didn't have directions, we wouldn't know if we were here or there. Right? Say yes. Yeah, we wouldn't know if we were here or there. So Krishna, along with his expansion of all his energies, also, as Vasudeva is pointing out, one of them is the direction, disha. Then he talks about spota, and this word actually means explosion. This is an integral philosophical aspect of our process of Krishna consciousness. Spota means an explosion of awareness. And how does it relate to language? Well, many of the philosophers over generations have debated about language and how it works, and of course even in modern day. So one of the most fascinating subjects there are in human society is linguistics. Don't you agree? 3 people said yes. And of course, Srila Jiva Goswami speaks about it in detail at the end of the Tattva Sandarbha. He gives a commentary on the Tattva Sandarbha, and he talks about linguistics. And how is it, an age-old topic, that we're able to receive knowledge? This comes up in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto, the prayers personified Vedas. It's 87, right? Chapter 87. Confirmation. There, it's Parikshit Maharaj who's asking Shukadeva Goswami, using material apparatus, the ear, the air, which is percussed from one speaking and then touches the ear, and it's apparently temporal. It's part of this world. So how would you then understand or come to knowledge or complete knowledge or understand adhoksaja, who is by definition beyond all language? The meaning, one of the meanings of adhoksaja. And there, that conversation is about how they're all Krishna's energies. And when one's intention is to give knowledge of Krishna, and one does it through the proper channel, then it's Krishna's prerogative to reveal himself to the person who listens to that sound. And the idea of speech is, as I just mentioned, brought up in this verse today. The word spota brings up a story that Jiva Goswami gives in one of his commentaries about language and how it works, or about self-realization and how it works. Would you like to hear a story? Okay, 20% said yes. Everybody else cover your ears. It's called The 10th Man. And one day, 10 men crossed the river. And when they got to the other side, wanting to be sure that everybody made it, each one counted to see how many were there, and they all came up with 9. Much to their alarm, until a bystander looked and said, "Excuse me, but I think you've all forgotten yourselves." They counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and they didn't count themselves, and each one did that. And upon the proclamation of this bystander who observed the mistake, they immediately understood, oh, I'm the 10th man. And Jiva Goswami mentions this in relationship to spota, or the explosion that takes place when one hears the right combination of words. He points out that words, and this is a common discussion in linguistic circles. Language is not just the combination of various sounds or words, but there are sentences and there's syntax. And within certain utterances, which are tactically in place, following the rules, one can have a spontaneous realization of some object in this world, but then Jiva Goswami says this is the means, shastrayoni dvat, as the Brahma Sutra says. This is the main means by which one comes to perfect knowledge. That one hears the language that comes from shabda praṇanam, which is apurusheya. It's perfect beyond the touch of human imperfection. And by hearing that, then one has spota, or an explosion of knowledge. And it bypasses the intellect and goes right to the soul. Interesting in this verse, did you notice that the commentators mentioned, as did Vasudeva, that there are 4 kinds of speech, and 3 of them are not verbalized. They're subtle, which is another topic heading for how everything in the world evolves from subtle to gross. And I'll come to an important point on that in just a moment. But first I want to touch on what's said in the verse here by Vasudeva, which is also confirmed in the purport by the commentators, comes from the Rig Veda. There's also mention of it in the Srimad Bhagavatam, elsewhere, in the 11th canto, by Krishna himself. And that is that speech starts from a desire. And Krishna mentions in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam how that desire emanates from the Muladhara chakra, which is at the base of the spine. It's a desire, but it's still in its subtle form. But then it rises in the system of chakras to the pashanti. It becomes it's an antique word, but it's grossify. It first appeared in Scientific American around 1851. Somebody used it in another context, but it's a good word and it's been used by commentators. Grossification, it means something subtle and then it becomes grosser. So that subtle desire, kama, it then rises to the level of what's called, first it's called paravak. It's vak, it's speech, but it's subtle, desire form. Then it rises to the navel. And that chakra, it becomes pashanti vak, where one's able to visualize that one's desire internally. Then it rises to the heart level, the chakra there, which is called madhyama vak. And there, the intellect begins to think of ways to bring that desire to fruition. And where do you think it goes next? Where would you want it to go? Prabhu, what's your name? Mayank? I couldn't hear. Mayan Nishringa. Where he pointed to his throat. Is that where it goes? Yes. It goes to your throat. And what happens when that energy, it comes from a desire, then it becomes, you visualize it, then you begin to intellectualize of how to make it happen, and then what happens when it comes here? You say it. And that's what we call speech. And so this is interesting and also fundamental to all of us, because we have speech. And what the acharyas point out is that speech is creative. We're a product of not only what we speak, but also what we listen to, the language that we listen to. Of course, we hear from Bhagavatam, Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantaksto Hibadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam, that when you engage in Krishna Katha, then you're bringing forth all spiritual paraphernalia. And Prabhupada talks about this in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam when he describes how anything manifests here in this world. For instance, he said, if you want to build a big skyscraper building, what you do is you hear about it. He says all the ingredients already exist. What are some of the ingredients in a skyscraper? Are you a structural engineer? What would you use if you wanted to build a skyscraper? Call a friend, he'll help you out. Huh? Steel. Anything else? Just a steel building? Yes? Cement, lots of cement. We can watch over here as they're building a skyscraper. You just look through the cracks and you can see it's mostly cement. And there's also steel. Oh, we should be asking you. What else do you have? Bricks, lots of water. All the ingredients, Prabhupada said, are already there, but when you talk about it, you hear about it, the ingredients come together. Otherwise, how did anybody get anything done during the pandemic? Because nobody could go anywhere, touch anything. All they did was talk on Zoom, and things came together. Because that's how everything manifests in this world. And that's also the schema for how the material world is created in the first place. As we know, there's Prakriti, which is the neutral state of all energy. And then when Mahavishnu glances at it, it becomes Mahatattva, or the cosmic intelligence. And then when the false ego of the living entities enter within it, then it divides into 3 sections because of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Goodness, the mind is manifested. In passion, the intelligence is manifested. And in ignorance, sound vibration, which is affected by the desires of the living entity to enjoy in the material world, is manifested. And from there, all other manifestations evolute, or evolve, I should say. They become evolutes. They're evolving from the subtle sound in the material world, and then all the forms are manifested, including the antakarana. That's the subtle facility behind all the senses. And then there's the tanmatra, which is the manifestation of the senses. It's all apparatus, they're apparati, in order for the soul who's turned away from Krishna to interact with the material world. But all the manifestation takes place because of sound in the mode of ignorance. So, somebody say, so what? So what does it mean to us? It means if you've been instrumental in creating the world by your speech and what you're listening to, you can uncreate it. Wouldn't you like to have an undo button? Like undo whatever you've done, or an uncreate button. If you don't like what you've created, uncreate it. You can reverse the process, and that's what happens with transcendental sound. As instead of cohorting with the material energy, talking about it, listening to ideas about how to manipulate it and so forth, one transfers one's hearing process to hearing from the spiritual world. Tad-va visargo janataga viplavo yasmin prati shlokam apadyavatyapi namanyanantasya yashonkitadiyad. You can finish my sentences. We know each other well enough. Shrimanti gayanti grananti sadhava means that there's sound that comes from another creation. And when that sound comes in, and you utilize that sound, it reverses the process of material creation and brings one back to one's original consciousness. And this idea of a spota, living beings, never actually mix with the material world. Asango hyayam purusha, the Vedas say, you're not part of the material world, never were, you're not right now either. So even Krishna says in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's no liberation for the soul, because he was never actually in bondage. This is one perspective, and Krishna's giving it to Uddhava, because you never even touched the material world. You're only imagining that you're interacting with it through this facility that's created because of material sound, which is generated by your own desire. So change it, and you can uncreate what you've done. And that's the process of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says, my last statement before I take reflections, questions, or complaints, is that just as if when you want to build a skyscraper building, you talk about it. Where's the glass, right? That's what you did, right? Punch? Right. He started bringing people in his office and said, we're going to have a skyscraper building over here. And lots of people talked about it, and they said, okay, where's the cement, and where's the this? And then they're still talking about it, and it's manifesting. The ingredients were already there, but they just talked about it in your office. And so Prabhupada says, just as you can manifest all the paraphernalia for material enjoyment in this world, if you change the vibration to Hare Krishna, then all spiritual paraphernalia will manifest in your life. And everything necessary for going back home, back to Godhead will be made available by the power of that transcendental sound. Okay, what do you think? Reflections or questions? Are you buying all this, or you want to complain, or you want to take it to in another direction? Ask a question. Lakshmi Prabhu. Great kirtan, thank you. You get a microphone with every...
It's not coming, you're a little slow.
7 seconds or less, or free breakfast on punch. Yeah, but there's people online and they'll curse us because they won't be able to hear you. Unless you tell me and then I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
Right over there.
In the Yoga Sutras, doesn't Patanjali Muni talk about?
The intelligence turns into form, right? The sound, like thought is form. When it takes it in, that's why they change now, putting words, and they put symbols instead, because that's the language of the brain, so the neuroscientists say. So this...
You mean emojis?
Yeah. So this sound vibration, you were saying, the manifestation, the subtle, the 3 subtle levels, and then the 4th level. But then you mentioned, and this is my question, you mentioned something about it can unmanifest. So is my understanding correct when you say material sound represented by desire, right? Because it's a subtle stage of the sound manifestation. It unmanifests, so the desire unmanifests, and therefore the interest in or the inclination towards material sound, material desires and fulfillment of those desires are kind of nullified by the presence of spiritual sound. Would that be a kind of an accurate understanding of what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma nirāvritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir. So, yeah, there's a way in which, in the very beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami mentions how by engaging Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchate, engage your senses in the service of Krishna instead of using it for your own purposes. Then your senses become purified. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir, brahmagnau brahmanahutam, brahmaiva tena gantavyam, brahmakarma samadhina. Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, whatever dravya, material things, are used in the service of the Lord. And he gives the example of a fire ceremony. The priest, because he's doing it for the purpose of yajna, and those who are participating, the spoon, the fire, everything, he says it becomes Brahman, because it's used in that way. And when we use our senses in the service of Krishna, then they also become transcendentalized, purified, and to the root. By the transcendental process, that original desire, as is one of the main topics of the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, one changes one's decision about sticking to the material world, which is a vrat. Grihavrata, Prahlad Maharaj says. So people that made a vow to stay in the material world, they can change their mind by the association of sadhus. And so, when we hear in the association of devotees, what verse am I thinking right now? For 20 points. That's right, I was thinking 325, Satam prasangam mamavir isam bido bhavanti hrit kara rasayanakata tajjoshanat ashwa pavargavartmani shradaratir bhakti anukramishuti. You may have a desire or more to enjoy the material world, or the last semblance of desire, some desires, but by the association of sadhus who are speaking Krishna Katha, it acts as a medicinal injection into the ear that goes into the heart, and then one changes one's direction from wanting to go to hell and stay in the material world, or stay in the material world at any cost, to going back home, back to Godhead. I could have just said yes. But those are few verses that go along with that, in my opinion. Reflection. Bhaktin Simran. Maharaj. And then Bhaktin Simran. And then, okay. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much. My question is, the Muhammad is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However,
the mantra is what?
Transcendental.
Yes, transcendental, yes.
None different than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, how can we come to the platform of pure chanting besides attentive? Is there any other ways how we can come to that realization that there is no difference between Krishna and his name besides being attentive? Or is it the only way?
Well, it doesn't hurt, that's for sure. It doesn't hurt to be attentive. But there are plenty of suggestions. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself recommends that one be humble. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead reserves the right to reveal himself to whomever he pleases. And if one develops an attitude of a humble servant, Krishna has every right. In fact, we know that he has an inclination to reveal himself when somebody has a service mood. Atashi Krishna namadi nabhaved grayamindriye seva mukhihi jivado swayameva spratyada. If one chants the Lord in the mood of seva, begins one's service by chanting the names of the Lord, then the Lord is inclined to reveal himself to such a person. So attitude is everything. If you have the attitude of a servant. Jiv Krishna das, e bishwas koileto oratu konai. If you just make your main persona as I'm servant of Lord Krishna, and you'll have no more difficulty, says Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So yes, attentiveness is vital, and also one's attitude of service. Okay, Simran, Bhaktin Simran, please go ahead. Pass the microphone to 10 o'clock. You can raise your hand.
You actually just answered my question. I was going to ask about the attitude that's required to facilitate this.
What was the last thing you said?
That is required to facilitate the...
See how important sound is? Yes, attitude is the most important. Prabhupada mentions it in the Nectar of Instruction. The attitude of the practitioner will determine his or her advancement in devotional service. Panchagoda Prabhu, thank you very much for holding forth here in Vrindavan for so many years. And you're such a stalwart. Just seeing you brings me a feeling of courage to go on. Thank you.
I came to
He also has a point.
I came to Govardhan and asked you if I should do this. Remember?
Nobody can hear you, fortunately, so. I don't know if that microphone's going to make it. It needs a battery. Prabhu, did you want to make a comment? I don't know if it'll help.
No, I know. About 16 years ago, we came to Govardhan, and I asked you and several others, Gopal Krishna Maharaj wants me to do this present. Should I do it? And you were very much on top of it, saying, you ordered me, by his order.
That's because I'm a big fan. I've seen you through the years dedicated to Sankirtan, going on book distribution. It's a battle out there. You stood as a giant in that forum. So
You're a bigger giant.
Okay, see if you have a comment.
So Guru Krishna, Krishna and Guru giving us the opportunity after wandering around, the Guru and Krishna giving us an opportunity. And then Krishna is saying that, yasya deve parabhaktir yata deve tata guru, that by the mercy, if one who has faith in Guru and Krishna, then Krishna tesham satata yuktanam, that if you actually worshiping him, he'll give you the intelligence by which to come to him. So do we really have to philosophically go through the details of understanding the sound and how it's developing and how the material ingredients are working and how we became entangled and all these things? Could we just chant Hare Krishna and get the mercy of Krishna and not be so philosophically inclined?
Yeah, that's okay. You can just chant Hare Krishna. The holy name is everything and will reveal everything, as it is Krishna himself. Iti murtyabhidanena mantramumurtam amurtikam yajate yagyap. In the 5th chapter of the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada says to Vyasadeva, Iti murtyabhidanena mantra murtim amurtikam. What's the 3rd line? Yajate yagya purusham apunam apunad pavadarshanam. Is that the last line? Anyway, what the meaning of this verse is that he says that the holy name is amurtikam. Murti means form, and it also means difficulty. 2 meanings in Sanskrit. And then he says, to see the form, one can take the process that is without difficulty, and that's chanting. The transcendental sound vibrations. And Prabhupada in the purport mentions the Pancharatric Vidhi, the Pancharatric mantras as well. And by those mantras, one can attain all perfection. The quintessential example would be from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, because we have Gopal Kumar, who didn't get any instruction from his guru. He just got a mantra. And, of course, when his guru gave him the mantra, Guru fainted because he heard the mantra himself, and he went into ecstasy and wandered off. And Gopal Kumar was left unguided. But the mantra, he was dedicated to the mantra because he had received it and had faith in it, but he didn't know exactly what it was. He didn't know anything about the universe, but the mantra pulled him back to Godhead. Of course, that's not the recommended process, because if you get guidance and you chant, then it can be very helpful. But yeah, in fact, studying a mantra, Krishna says to Uddhava, can help purify your understanding of it, like where it comes from and how it works. And we might just say, well, whatever happened to just chant Hare Krishna? Well, go ahead and just do it then. A lot of times people say, well, what do we need everything else for? So just go chant and see if you can maintain that. In Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami says, Taśṭādhana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya paśyantyatmani chatmano bhaktya shrutagrahitaya. And that is that one's devotional practice is best fortified by jnana and vairagya, so some kind of knowledge. That's why Prabhupada was holistic in his approach. He could have just said, just chant Hare Krishna, and he did. And in 10.10 in the Bhagavad-Gita, Prabhupada says if you're not intellectually inclined and you just want to chant Hare Krishna, then Krishna, tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam, he'll help you from within your heart. That's totally possible. But it's nice also that we have this sambandha gyan, something Haridas Thakur says in the Harinam Chintamani, along with chanting. And I find personally that people in the modern world are helped or appreciate having some context for the chanting on a regular basis. Even during japa sessions, sometimes we have these japa circles, and during the japa circle we'll stop at interval and say, now you remember we're chanting Hare Krishna, right? Like, yeah, right, I forgot. And why are we chanting and so forth? It helps to bring us to attention. So both things are possible. Thank you, Prabhu. When we were in New Delhi, we landed yesterday. You got points? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
I
Shri
was
Prabhu.
just thinking about sacrifices. So many people put an emphasis on doing fire sacrifices, and Krishna only mentions in the Gita that of sacrifices I am chanting of holy names japa, and the only verses he really mentions the fire sacrifice is offering the hearing process in the fire of the controlled mind. In the 4th chapter, the next verse, it talks about offering your activities in the fire of the controlled mind. But outside of our movement, even in it, quite often there's an emphasis in doing many fire sacrifices instead of concentrating as much on what Krishna recommended.
Well, Prabhupada did fire sacrifices.
Yes.
I was there in Chicago in 1975, and there was a huge fire sacrifice. And Satsvarup Maharaj, is there anybody on the sound? Can anybody fix that? The gain is too high, please. In 1975, Prabhupada had a Maha sacrifice. Of course, he started the fire sacrifices in the early days, right? So can't say it's not to be done. And during that time, devotees chanted, it was Rohini Kumar Prabhu. He organized a group of devotees to chant Brahma Samhita and Purush Sukta. And afterward, Prabhupada said, this is very nice. But Satsvarup Maharaj tells, or was it Pradyumna? He tells about how he was doing one of the yagyas for Prabhupada, and he had read up on it. And he was asking Prabhupada detailed questions about the yagya. Should it be like this or like that? And he said Prabhupada leaned over and he said 2 words, shortcut. Fire sacrifices are dramatic. I find that at ceremonies when there's a fire sacrifice, people really pay attention. And you know this Sadhu Sangha program where thousands of devotees come to chant Hare Krishna? There's an initiation ceremony, but we don't have a fire sacrifice, and we can't figure out why they don't want to have an open fire in the middle of a luxury hotel. Doesn't make sense. No, fire yagas are good. Please, go ahead. We have 2 more minutes. That was the whole 2 minutes. So.
Thank you for
No, just
this.
Hare Krishna.
You mentioned that the Brahmana have different languages. One is spoken and the other are silent. From the heart, there is different languages who are coming. Can you describe more about that?
Everything in the world comes from subtle to gross. And speech is the same way. We're subtle beings, and the sound that comes from the soul, desire, then through a process of grossification comes to the voice box, and then when you say it, it starts to manifest in the world, and you can move the energies of the world. And that's the process we find in creation, that there are subtle elements behind all the gross elements. In other words, all gross elements evolve from the subtle elements. And speech is a grossified form of desire. It comes out in the speech. Then, of course, we have writing, which is an abstraction of speech, and that's also one of our stock and trade processes, isn't it? Say yes. Everybody say yes. Yeah, it's our family business. So that speech which comes from parampara, it was written down, it's an abstraction. It's interesting, it can be reconstituted. Somebody takes a book, for instance, and brings it home. They get the same speech. That's what Prabhupada called it literary kirtan, when somebody gets the written, the word was spoken, Prabhupada spoke into dictaphone, it got transcribed, put into a book. Now you've got a really efficient way of distributing that sound to places that it normally wouldn't go. It can go into somebody's house or business or their car. It would be hard to jump in somebody's back seat and have a Harinam, wouldn't it? Usually? Please say yes. I mean, you can try it. But if the book goes in there, then they've got it all, and they take it away. That transcendental speech is there. In this way, we can change the whole world. So we just have to amplify. We want to amplify the sound vibration that comes from the spiritual world. Golokera prematana harinama sankirtan. More distribution of transcendental sound through kirtan, through book distribution, and through speaking in various venues. So we're all deputized to do that. Right? Everybody say yes. Yes. Okay, I have a free gift because you were so kind to sit through this whole thing. And it's been a pleasure, and I'm glad that we got to talk about this together. And I look forward to discussing it more in the future. And for now, I'd like to give everyone here a gift. So, what should I do? First of all, I'll end the class, then I'll give out free gift. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Gauranitai, Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Radhe Shyam, if you so desire, please give us spiritual strength to purify our speech and give us spiritual strength to engage in hearing sound vibration that uplifts the soul. And please empower us to spread it all over UP and Dravida Desh. Anywhere else? Himachal. Come on, give a shout out for your place. You don't want it to go to your place? Huh? All India. And do you want it to go over to Europe? Which part of Europe do you want it to go to? North, south? Don't be so general. All over America, all over the world. How about if we just spread the transcendental vibration everywhere? Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarishya kripasindhabe vacha patitanam bhavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha nantakoti vaishnaviniki jai gaur premanande haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,